Hello guys, in this video we are going to build a mobile application, and the application is called Authentication app. We are going to use React Native with Expo, Node.js for backend, MongoDB for database, React Query for managing server states, and Redux for managing global state in our application. Before we get into code, let's look at the final project demo. We have the home screen with video background and text on the video. And we have these two links, login and register. If I click on the login, it has taken me to the login screen and I can go ahead and then log in. As soon as I log in, it has taken me to my profile page, and in here we have what is called bottom tab navigation. And if I click on the profile, this is my profile and I can log out. And for settings, we have some static data here for the account, notification, privacy. All these ones are not doing anything here, they are just static text. So if I log out, as you can see, I have been redirected, meaning that that profile component or screen is being protected. Let's see what we are going to cover in this project. We will learn about file-based routing using Expo Router, stack navigation, Redux integration for managing global state, React Query for managing server state, bottom tabs navigation, protecting screens, logging in, register, log out, profile, and we are going to use ncroc or Logout tunnel to expose our Backend API so that our React Native application can talk to our server. Let's see the flow for these two stacks, and that is Redux and React Query. In case you want to learn about Redux and React Query, then you can check my full course on Udemy. So let's see the component. Let's take it that this is our React Native application and this is React Query, and that is TanStack, and our Node.js application, and lastly we have Redux over here. Let's see the process involved when a user logs in or log out or register. In the first place, the user will make a request from our mobile application. The request will be sent to TanStack, and that is React Query. Then React Query will make the request to our backend. After we got the data, then we can decide either we should save the data into Redux store or not. And the purpose for Redux here is that it is going to manage global state. So you look inside your application, which data that you want it to be global. In this case, the authentication status. So let's say that the request was fetching of users. In this case, we are not going to save the data into Redux store, but instead we are going to use TanStack for it. But let's say we are managing global state. Therefore, the data will be saved into Redux. Let's look at the pages or the screens that we are going to build. We're going to have the home screen. And in here we have two buttons, login and register. When a user click on the login, it is going to open the login screen, likewise the register. And in here, when a user register, it is going to display the bottom tab navigation. And when a user click on the profile, we're going to see this screen, likewise this screen. So this is what we are going to design for these screens. To be able to understand and appreciate React Native, unless you are familiar with MainStack. In that way, you will find using React Native pretty easily. So in case you want to learn more about MainStack, then you can check my main full stack course. For the Backend API, I have already prepared them for you, and this is part of our main project course where we build this one. Likewise in our main full stack course. With this one being said, let's get into code. we are going to focus on the front end, and that is our React Native application. We are going to use Expo for generating our React Native application. So if you go to expo.dev, click on the read the documentation. And we are going to use this command. So copy that. And then back to my VS Code, open the terminal, and then paste that. And for this one, it is going to generate our application with built-in file-based routing, and we don't want that. We want to start from scratch. Therefore, we are going to give it a command as --template. In here, we can decide what to use. So I'm gonna hit enter. All right, and select blank and enter, and let's provide the name for this project. I'm gonna use auth app. And enter. It is going to generate our React Native project for us. All right, it is done. So let me cd into the auth app, and we are going to use this command to start our application. And we are going to use this command as npx expo start. For this one, I'm going to have the options to start our application, either to use iOS simulator or Android. For me, I'm going to use Android. So here I'm going to select my virtual device and then select this one. In case you want to know how to install these simulators, let's visit the official documentation and click on setting up your environment. It says that where would you like to develop, either by using Android, iOS, Android emulator, or the simulator. If you want Android, click on that. It's going to give you the options to follow, which are these options on Mac. You need to follow these steps. And in case you want to use the iOS simulator, click on that, and it's going to have the steps to install. All right, at this point, I assume that you have your simulator. And to use the Android, press A for Android. And this is our new React Native application using Expo. We are going to configure it to use Expo Router. In case you are new to Expo Router, let's read more under it. To make our life easier, I'm going to search for Expo Router in Google and click on the first search result. And here is the introduction to Expo Router. In short, Expo Router is a way for implementing navigation in React Native application. This means that by default, React Native using Expo has a built-in navigation. And this one uses file-based routing or navigation. This is similar when using Node.js. So in case you are familiar with Node.js, then understanding Expo Router is going to be much easier. And Expo Router was built on top of React Native navigation library. Before the current version of Expo, it doesn't have the built-in file-based navigation unless we use a different library called React Native Navigation. But with this one, it is going to use the concept of file-based and then React Native Navigation Library. So let's look at the steps. We're going to have these steps. The quick start. This one, as soon as you initiate this command without providing the --template, it is going to configure the file-based routing or Expo Router for us. But since we are beginning, we are going to start in the manual way. So click on the manual installation. And in here, since we are using SDK 15 above, we are going to install this package. So copy that and then back to the terminal. And let me open a new instance and cd into that and then paste that. The next step is that we are going to specify the main entry point. So copy this one and we are going to locate the package.json file, which is this one. And in here, we are going to replace this one with the Expo Router configuration as that. Let's look at the next step. We are going to pass the scheme inside the app.json file. So let's locate the app.json file, which is this one, and you can place it anywhere you want, and make sure to bring comma here and then provide the name of your project or the scheme. I'm going to use auth app. And that is it. With this one, we have successfully integrated or installed Expo Router. So let me clear the terminal, and then here let me rebuild my project. All right, and it says that welcome to Expo. Now that we are done installing or configuring Expo Router, let's see how to use it. Expo Router uses what is called file-based routing, which is the same when using Node.js. Node.js also uses file-based routing. This simply means that it is going to use the file names and folders as a path. And in case you are familiar with React Native Navigation Library, this Expo Router was built on top of that. Alright, so this means that with the previous version of React Native, we didn't have a built-in navigation called Expo Router. But with the current version, we have it. And this is going to make our life easier when implementing navigation. So let's see how to use it in our application. If I click on this button, it is going to initiate this command, and that is creating the app folder, and inside gonna have the index.js. But let's start from scratch. So in the project here, we are going to add a special folder called app. The name must be app. This is how we used to implement file-based routing, and in here, any file that we're gonna place in here is going to be a path. If I say index.js, this is also a special file name. This is going to be the home page. So let's create the component or the screen by using this snippet. I have this one because of the extension I will show you. So let me rename this one as home. If you want to have the same snippet, then search for React, and that is ES7, React Redux, and React Native Snippet Library by this author. Alright, so now that we have the home screen, now let's visit the application, and we have the home over here. Now let's say I want to have a different screen or a page called About Us or About. This means that when a user visits the base URL /about, it is going to display the component or the screen that we are going to create as this. For the name of the component, it can be anything. If I save it, let's look at it. We have the home screen. Let's say I want to navigate to the About Us from the home screen. I'm going to provide a link. And to be able to navigate, we have two options. One is to use router from Expo Router, which is this, or link component from Expo Router as that. Don't worry, we are going to use this one extensively as we proceed in this project. So in here, I'm going to provide the link, and then I will say go to About, and then provide href, and the path is going to be /about. That's the name of the file as About. With this one, save it, and let's see. If I click on the About, as you can see, we have the About screen over there. Don't worry, we are going to implement some styling to make it more beautiful. At the moment, understand how to use file-based routing. And if I add a folder called post, and inside I can add what is called list of posts as that. And let me scaffold the page as post list. All right, with this one, the path is going to be /post/list. So in the home page here, I'm gonna have one link as go to post, and the path here is going to be / the folder name and then the file name. So it's going to be post /list, and if I get back to the application, if I click on the go to post, as you can see, I'm on the post screen. And if I provide index, this means that this is a home page for the post here as JS, and I'm gonna scaffold the screen and I will say post home here, or just home screen or index. Now if I get back to the home screen here and provide /post, and I will say go to post home, and let's see, click on that, and this is what we have. As you can see, how easy when implementing navigation using Expo Router. But this is not enough. We are going to build our application, and that is by having the home screen, which is this one. So we're gonna have a well-structured folder structure for our application. Before we get into that, let's move step by step. I'm going to remove everything from here. All right, and I forgot to show you that in case we want to ignore a folder not to be regarded as routing, we're gonna place it in a special syntax as this. So for this one, if you visit /post, it will not be regarded as a path. All right, so let's continue to implement the navigation. For navigation in mobile application, we're gonna have 3 types. One is stack navigation. Let me show you here in the diagram, which is this one. This is what we call the stack navigation, because we have the arrow here and some default styling at the top here, meaning that the screens are going to be on top of each other. And we're gonna have bottom tabs navigation and a drawer. For this project, we're gonna use the stack and then the bottom stack navigation. So to be able to add the home page inside the app folder, we're gonna add a special file called _layout. As you can see, for this one and JS, it follows the same format. So in here, we are going to specify the type of navigation that we are going to use. For example, either using stack, bottom tab, or tabs. For the home screen for this project is going to be a stack navigation. Let's see in the diagram, which is this one. As you can see, we have the stack navigation and these icons are the links. So we're gonna regard this one as stack navigation. That is the first requirement. And then we're gonna have index.js, and this index is going to be the home page. As you can see, it doesn't have any path that matches that because we don't have any component yet. So if I scaffold this one to use that, I will say home here. Now if I save it, let's see, we have home here as before. So we have to specify what type of navigation that we want to use. This is where you provide the _layout. In here, we are going to use stack navigation from Expo Router. So all what we need to do is to export this one. So here I'm going to name it as export default and then stack navigation component. With this one, let's see, and this is what we have. So in here, we can customize the behavior of our screen. We can change the color for this one. So to do that, we are going to return as stack. And then inside here, we are going to configure the individual screens by using .screen. And in here, we are going to specify the name of the path or the file. in this case the index. I'm going to pass in the options, and we will say that header shown is equal to false. This means that we don't want to show the header here as you saw. If I say that true, let's see, and we have it as index, and we can even change the name for this one. And let me add one more. I will say title. I can override the name for this one to home, and we have it as that. If I say welcome, I'm gonna have it as welcome. All right, so for this one, you can customize it the way you want it. But for the home page, you're gonna have something like this. In here, we're gonna use the video API from Expo and add some styling to it. So let's do that. We are going to design the home page. We will need one more component from the React Native as touchable opacity. This is going to help us to add some cool effects. For example, when we click on the button, we're going to see that indeed it has been touched. Alright, so for this one, we are not going to focus on the CSS. I'll provide the CSS for you. So let's look at the structure. We're going to have the view as our wrapper. And then for the view, we're going to have a CSS class. So in here, I'm going to provide the CSS for the home page. Definitely, I'll provide you with the final source code. So replace with this one. All right. So these are the CSS for the home page. We have the container, the video, the overlay. Let's begin with the container by providing style equal to that, and then provide styles.container. And then after that, we're going to have the video player. We are going to use Expo AV for displaying videos. So let's search for Expo AV, which is this one. And we're going to install that by copying this back to the terminal. And then let me open a new instance and then paste that and install. All right, it is done. So let me save this one and reload the application. All right, so in here, let's bring in the video from the Expo AV, and we will need resize mode as that. So let's configure the video. So in the comment here, which is this, provide the video and then save closing as that. We're going to pass in these props. The one is going to be the reference. Therefore, let's have some internal state here by saying that const video is equal to react.useRef and pass in null. Then inside, we're going to specify the video ref here, and then the style. The style, we're going to use styles.video. And then let's provide the source of the video. And then in here, I'm going to specify, if you go to pixabay.com, you can search for any video. So select video here. Let's say you want to use this one. Click on that and then right click and click on copy video address back to the project and paste that. All right, so let's finish up with the others. We're gonna have resize mode. We're gonna use the resize mode, the one that we got from Expo AV. On that, we have what is called cover. And then gonna have should play. We want to play it as soon as it loaded, and then it's looping, and that is it. With this one, let's see the magic. Well, this one's supposed to be an object, and then inside, we're gonna specify the URL, and then paste that bottom and side. And let me reload the app, and let's see. And this is what we have. Alright, as you can see, the video is playing. But for this, we don't want to see the header here, so we can customize it in the layout here by providing header shown being set to false. And there we go. What has left is the text on it, and then the login and then the register button. So let's locate the home page, which is this one. Now you're gonna have one for the text, and then inside you're gonna have the following text. And for the container for this, we're gonna provide a style by using style.overlay. And then for the individual ones, provide a style and it's equal to style.main_text. And let me have one for the subtitle as coding school. And then the text here is going to be subtext. And lastly, for the tagline as build features. Let's see what we have, and this is what we have. The last one is going to be the buttons. Wrapper as view, and let's provide the style as equal to buttons. And then inside, we're gonna have two buttons. I want to place it in the touchable opacity, and the first one is going to be login. For the touchable, I'm going to pass in the style.button, and for the text is going to be style.styles.button text. And let me copy and paste for the registration as register, and we have it as that. What has left is the navigation. When I click on the login, I want to show the login. Alright, so let me have the use router from supposed to be use router instead. And let's have instance of that by assigning to router here equal to that. So we're gonna add some event listener on the touchable opacity. I'm gonna pass in on press. When a user press on that, we are going to trigger router.push, and the path is going to be login, but we're gonna provide it as off/login, and then copy this one, paste it on the register, and change this one to register. At the moment, we don't have these paths. And if I click on the login, as you can see, unmatched route, meaning that this path doesn't exist. So we are going to have a folder under the app as off. For this one, you can name it whatever you want. So inside, we're gonna have the login.js and then register.js. So let's scaffold the as that, and I will say register, and then let me have one for the login in. Alright, so now if I go to the project and if I click on the login, well, we still have unmatched route. I think I mess up with the off. It's supposed to be th. Likewise, this one. And now let's try again. If I click on the login, I have the login. Likewise, the register. We also have the register. I'm going to deactivate the video being playing, so let me comment that one out so that it can speed up our debugging and refreshing of our project. Alright, so let's focus on the login in. For this one, we are going to use Formik and Yop for implementing form handling. If you have taken my other courses, I often use these two libraries. So I'm going to use npmi Formik, and I'm going to use Yup for form validation and Axios for making the HTTP request, and hit enter. Alright, it is done. So let me reload the application. Now let me close these guys and let's focus on the login in. Let's bring in Formik as that, and then import asterisk as Yup from the Yup package. We're gonna have the schema, and it's going to be as yup.object.shape. I'm gonna pass in the email field. It is required and must be email, and then last one is going to be the password. Pass in my custom error message as email is required, and then password is also required. Now that we have this, we are going to have our form. And for the CSS for the login in, I'm going to provide you with that. So I'm going to copy it and replace with this one. So let's have the first CSS for the container as styles.container. And for the text also, I'm going to provide style is equal to styles.title, and it's called login. And let's have the Formik configuration. So in here, bring in the Formik, and then for this one, we're gonna pass in the initial values is equal to object, specify email and password, and we're gonna have the onSubmit handler as that, and lastly the validation schema. Perfect. This is where we're gonna trigger the HTTP request. In between the Formik here, we're gonna extract the properties and methods that's going to make our life easier when using Formik. So as an object, we're gonna have what is called handle submit, and then handle blur, values, errors, and touched. So here after the bracket, then we are going to return the actual individual input fields by providing the view from React Native as self-closing, and inside we're gonna provide the style, which is equal to style.input, and then the placeholder as email, and the onChange is equal to handle change by passing in the email, and then on blur passing in the field as email, and then values.email. And lastly, the keyboard type, we're going to use email address, supposed to be keyboard type, which is equal to email address. Now let's see what we have. If I go to login, we have the input field as email. And let's display error messages in case the user is not providing the email and he or she is trying to submit. So in here, we're going to provide errors.email, and in case it is touched, we are going to display this JSX. So in here, I'm going to use text as that. So here it says that in case we have an error on the email input, and if the user has touched the email field, and then we are going to display the errors.message. Now with this one, if I go to login, as you can see, I have the validation. We're going to have one for the password. It is going to be the same process. I'm going to copy the input for this one. Likewise, the error message here, paste that. The difference here is to change email to password. So here as password, and then the value here is equal to password. And to remove this, we're going to provide secured entry as true and change this one to password. And let's see, and this is what we have. If I click done, as you can see, password is required. And lastly, let's have the login button as we did before. I'm gonna say login button, and it's going to be the touchable opacity as we did before, and then inside provide a text, and then we will say that remove this one from here. All right, and we say that login by passing in the classes or the CSS, and we have it as login. We're gonna have one for the registration. It is going to be the same process. The difference here is to change the input fields. So I'm gonna copy this one and back to the registration, paste that. I'm gonna rename this one to register. You can use any name of your choice. So here you're gonna have confirm password, which is equal to this, and that is it must be one of the reference to the password. All right, so in the initial values here, I'm gonna pass in the password. Also by default it is empty string. And then let me have one. I'm going to copy this one and then paste it. And for the last password, this one, I will say confirm password, and here as confirm password as that, where you see password change to confirm password. We have an error. I have to change this one to register. And now if I go to the home page and register, I have it as that. Now to make sure that they are working in the onSubmit inside the Formik here, I'm logging the values. So I'm going to provide, let me change this one to register. The title here, which this one to register. Let's get into the login, and then the button here change to register. So in the login in, I'm gonna provide email@gmail.com. The password 12345, and I still see email and password is required. Well, I made a mistake. This is supposed to be on change text, this one. So let me change this one to on change text, and for the registration, change to that, likewise this, and likewise that. Last step is that we are going to bind the handle submit on the touchable opacity. We're going to pass in on press and pass in the handle submit from Formik, which is this one. The same thing for the registration, pass in on press and then the handle submit. With this one, let's see the magic. When I click on login and then provide email@gmail.com and the password something like this and log in, let's see the console or the terminal, and we have email and password as that. Remember, we are logging the values in the onSubmit. Now it is working. What has left is we are going to implement the bottom tab navigation. All right, so let's get into it. For this one, to be able to implement the bottom tab navigation, you're going to provide a special folder as that and pass in as tabs. It must be as it is, otherwise it will not work. And then inside, I'm going to provide in the underscore layout. This is the entry point for the bottom tab or the navigations. This way we're going to configure the navigation either to show the header or to change the name. So in here, we're going to use what is called tabs from Expo Router. And then we're gonna have the main file to run when a user visits the bottom tabs as that. So in here, I will say tab home as, and you can name it whatever you want. So when a user visits the bottom tabs, it's going to display this one. All right, so let's configure the bottom tabs. We're going to export as root and just return the tabs. So how can we navigate into that? And for this, when a user logs in successfully, we are going to redirect the user to the bottom tabs navigation. At this point, we are ignoring the main logic for authentication. So let's get into the login. And we're going to redirect in the on submit here. At the moment, we are just going to mimic. Remember, we don't have the router here. That is the Expo Router as use router as that. And let's have instance of router here, which is equal to that. And then in the on submit here, paste that, and here we are going to use router.push, and here we're going to push the user to the bottom tabs, and the path is going to be as bracket and then pass in the tabs, and that is the name of the folder, which is this one. Now with this one, if I click on login, let me provide some default values for the login in to avoid typing anytime I want to log in. So for the initial values, I will say ema@gmail.com, and then the password as that. All right. So when I click on, let me get back home, log in. As you can see, I am on the bottom tab navigation, and this is the home page. So for this one, we can customize it by changing the icon. So let's configure the bottom tab, which is this one. To do that, we're going to pass in the tabs as that, and inside we're going to have the configuration for the individual bottom tabs. The first one is the index. In this case, we only have one file, which is this one, so we can customize this one over here as that. For this one, let me say true here for the header shown, and this is what we have. That is the index. So let me hide it by using false. Perfect. And I want to change the index to something different. Therefore, comma here and title, I will say home, and this is what we have. I want to change this one to use an icon. To do that, we are going to export or import from Font Awesome. And we have the icons from vector icons as soon as we generate our application using Expo. We are going to use what is called tab bar icon as tab bar icon, which is this. It is going to be a function as that. And inside, we're going to destructure to get the color, and we are going to return the GSX as that. We are going to return the font awesome, and for the name for the icon, we're going to use home. Now let's see, and we have it here as home. If you want to know more how the icons are being used, let's search for Expo icons, which is vector icons. So in here, you can search for any icon. Let's say I want to search for a car. All right, so if I click on that, this one is from Ant Design, and all what we need is to copy the component by passing in the size and then the color. All right, so here, the color, I'm going to use the one that we got from the tab bar icon. And then for the size, I'm going to use 28. All right, let's see. And this is what we have. I want to have two more screens. So in the tab bar here, I'm going to have one called profile. As soon as I do that, it's going to be added to the tab bar navigation. Well, let me have the page or the screen as profile. And now let's see, log in, and we have it here as profile. So for the profile, we can also customize it in the main entry point, paste it, change the name here to profile, and I want to maintain it as profile. I want to use uppercase as profile. And for the name, for the icon, I'm going to use user here, and we have it here as profile. And lastly, is going to be settings. So here, settings, and then let's customize it. Copy and paste, change the name here to settings, and then change this one to uppercase settings, and then use cog icon and log in. There we go. For the profile, this is what we have. Settings, this is what we have. So for the settings, you can use any component of your choice. So I'm gonna provide you with the component for the settings. All right, so I'm gonna replace with this one. All right, just some static text, and by using icon from the vector icons, let's see, and this is what we have. And for the home page also, we are using some static text. So I'm gonna copy that one, and then definitely I'll provide the home page for you and replace with this. In here, we are using what is called linear gradient from Expo. So make sure to install this one. Let me get back to the Google and search for Expo gradient. And then let's look at the installation. Copy that, open the terminal, and then install that. This is going to give us some linear gradient on our text. Let me reload the application. All right, and there we go. For this one, you can use any text of your choice. Perfect. So let's focus on the main logic. Now that we are done with the UI, with the navigations, let's focus on the main logic by integrating the backend into our project. For the Backend API, I have already prepared them for you, and we built this API under our main full stack course and our main stack project based course. So if you want to learn how to build this API from scratch, then you can check my course on that. All right, so here I'm going to provide you with the final source code also for the backend. All what you need to do is to cd in by initiating npm I to install all the dependencies. And the next step is that make sure to use your own MongoDB connection string. For this one, I'm using my local connection string. Perfect. So let's look at the endpoint. If you get into the route, we have this endpoint for the registration and then the login in and profile. For this project, we're going to use the registration and login in. If you look at the model, in here we have the email and password for the login in, and then the controller for the registration. This is for registration and this is for the login in. Perfect. Let's look at the port. In the app, the port is called 8000, which is this one. So to run this project, use node -- watch, and then the name of the main entry point, it is called app, and DB has been connected. Now we are going to communicate to our backend using our React Native application. But here is a problem. When using localhost, our mobile application cannot communicate using localhost. Therefore, we need to find a way to expose our backend API. The first option is we have to deploy this one to the internet and use the right APIs. Or we can use ncroc or local tunnel to expose the API to have rare endpoint as if we have deployed this project. And using local tunnel is much easier. So if you search for local tunnel, let's see the process involved. We can install it globally and by using local tunnel the port of our server, and that is it. For this one, I'm not going to install it locally, so let's visit the GitHub repository. We have a command by using npx. This one will not install the package globally. So let me get back to my backend. Make sure that the server is running locally and open a new instance and paste that. And make sure to use the same port as your server. In this case, we have it as 8000, which is correct. Now, if I hit enter, let's see. So this is my live URL for my backend. So here, I'm going to test it in my Tender client. If you don't have it, make sure to install Tender client. If you go to extensions, search for Tender client, or you can use Postman for testing, which is this. All right, I have it. Therefore, I'm gonna run by having a request by passing in the endpoint. The base endpoint here is from the local tunnel, and the endpoint is API users /login, as I have shown you in the route here as that. So now if I hit send, let's see. As you can see, it has been communicated to my server. That is why I got a response from the server. Likewise, the registration also, I'm gonna have the response from that. Perfect. Now we have exposed the backend, and now these are the endpoints. So in case it shut down, make sure to run and change the name of the path to point to the server. Now it's time for us to integrate TanStack into it. So let's search for TanStack or React query. And in case you want to learn more about TanStack, I have a course on that. So click on that and then make sure to select the current version by using the version 5 by the time of recording this video. And this is what I use anytime I build main stack project. All right, so click on the docs and then click on the installation and then copy one of the snippets here back to the project, which is this one. And let me open a new instance, paste that, and then enter. So the purpose for TanStack is that it is going to make our life easier to manage server state by handling error, loading, success, pending, and even caching and background functions, and so much more. All right, so now we have installed the package. Next step is that we have to configure it. So in here, I'm gonna have a folder called services. I'm using this syntax simply because I don't want to use this one as file-based routing. So inside, we're gonna have some configurations. The first one is called query client.js, and we are going to import query client from TanStack. And here is going to be as const new query client and then export the query client. So the next step is that we have to wrap this one in the main entry point for application. If you look at the main entry point, which is _layout, as you can see over here, this is the main entry point that uses the stack navigation as that. All right. So now we are going to wrap this one inside our stack navigator. So bring in the query client from the services as that, and we will need query client provider from TanStack, and we're going to wrap it as query client provider and then place this one inside. And for the provider, I'm going to provide in the client by passing in the query client, and that is it. We are done configuring it. How easy it is. Let's rerun the project to make sure that everything is working fine. All right, it's working. The next step is that we are going to make the HTTP request for logging in, and we are going to use TanStack. And for TanStack, the first requirement is that the function for the request must return a promise. So I'm going to have the function to make the HTTP request. So in the services here, I'm going to have a folder called API. I'm going to have a file called api.js, and let's bring in Axios, and here is going to be create a function to return a promise, and it's going to be as one for the login in. It is going to be as const login user is equal to, and I have the autocomplete. For this one, we have to destructure it as that, and then pass in as that, and the endpoint, we're going to use the Backend API, which is, this one is for registration. Copy that, and then replace with that, change this one to login. And for this one, we are going to ignore the try and catch block because TanStack is going to handle the error and loading for us. So here we are returning a promise. This is because anytime you return a value by using async, it means that you are returning a promise. I'm going to have one for registration. So change as register. And for this one also, I'm going to pass in the email and password. All right. And then let's export them as that. and I'm gonna log in using this. I think I have some duplication here. Where from that? I think I messed up with something. All right, good. So I'm gonna log in and let's see the console, and we have all the properties from the server, and that is the response. We have status code 404. This means that something went wrong, and that is the endpoint doesn't exist. Don't worry, we're gonna fix that. And then we have is error, which means it's true, is idle, is false, is paused, is pending, is success. And then we have these functions and then the error also. Well, let's fix the 404 issue. This means that our backend API has been shut down, and that is a local tunnel. Let me restart. And this is one caveat when developing locally. When we deploy it, we will not see this shutting down. So let me locate the API. This one, let me change this one to that. Select all, and then, well, this one's supposed to be register. That is the endpoint. Now, let me reload the application, log in and log in. Let me check. And we have the result from the server as a success is equal to true. And then let's look at other properties. Is pending, is false. And then we have the data from the server, and that is a login user. How cool it is. So in here, I can display some loading or error. So on the form for the button, we are going to use what is called activity indicator from React Native, which is that we are going to show some loading in case we're going to have an error. Remember, we are logging the mutation here. So on the login in here, this button, we are going to make a condition. So cut this one from here, and I'm going to use mutation. On that, we have what is called is pending, meaning that it is loading. In case we have one, we're going to use the activity indicator, which is this. Otherwise, show this. Let me pass in a color to white as hashtag 3Fs. All right, with this one, let me try again, log in, and we have the loading. Let's also display success and error or redirecting. So remember, on the mutation here, we have a property called a success. So here I will say display messages. All right, and it's going to be as in case we have is error. I'm using optional chaining to avoid using AND operator. So in case we have one, then we are going to display this error message, and that is invalid credentials. But we are going to use the error from the server, and from the style, we're going to use the one that we have already specified as styles.error text. And then for the error, we can access it on the mutation.error.response.data.message. All right, so let's trigger error. I'm going to provide this invalid login details, and let's see. And we have invalid login credentials. I'm going to have one for success, and that is in case it is success, then we are going to say login success, and then I'm going to change this one to success text. And let's see, let me log in, and we have login success. I think my CSS is not correct for this. All right, so let me change the color for the CSS, and that is a success text. I'm not sure we have the success text here, so let me add that one here as success text, and I'm gonna use color and a margin bottom of 16. Perfect. Now, after logging in, we are going to redirect the user to the bottom tabs navigation. Don't worry, as soon as we implement Redux, we are going to do that. The next step is the registration. So for the registration, it's going to be the same process for the login in. So to make our life easier, I'm going to copy the mutation logic here, remove this, and then copy this one back to the registration, which is this, paste that, and then let's import mutation, and this one is register user. Perfect. And let me copy the one in the onSubmit, that is the mutation, copy everything, and back to the registration for the onSubmit, which is this, paste that. I think I messed up with the importation, so it begins here, copy this one, and then calling the mutation comment also, and then in here paste that. Perfect. Alright, everything remains the same because here we are using the registration and change this one to register. And for the error message also, I'm going to copy this one and then back to the registration, paste that. Here I will say register or registration is successful. And then for the loading also, we will need the same logic for the touchable. So in between here, copy that and back to the registration, and then remove this text and then paste that. Let's import the indicator. That's the activity indicator. Let me see in case I have it already. Yeah, we have it, so no problem. And change this one to register, where we have duplication of the mutation, the one that we just copied. So I'm going to remove this one and this one from here, likewise this one, and then remove this one and remove this one also, and this is the implementation. With this one, let's try out. Register with the previous account. We have user already exists, but if I register using email and register, we have registration success. Let me also add some styling to that, and that is the success text. And then provide it as that, and let's see, and this is what we have. Now we are done with the turn stack. What has left is we are going to integrate Redux into it because we want to manage global state in our application. So let's just do that. Back to Chrome, I'm gonna search for Redux Toolkit, and for this one also, in case you want to learn more about React Redux and to be more specific, Redux Toolkit, I have a course on that. So let's continue. Click on the get started, and we are going to install the Redux Toolkit back to the project, and then let me open the installation terminal. And let me clear everything and paste that, and we will need React Redux as our binder and hit enter. So let's have the folder structure for the Redux side of it. So in the app folder, I'm gonna have a folder called Redux, and you can name it whatever you want. I'm gonna have two files. One is the store.js, and then off-slice or slice.js. So let's begin with the slice. The slice are the pieces or functions in your application. For this one, we are going to manage only one slice, and that is for authentication. That is why I name it as off-slice. You can name it whatever you want. So let's look at the steps involved. First step is that we are going to have a function to get the user from async storage. When we are using web application, we have it as local storage. So I will say function, therefore we have to install this package. So let's get back to Google and then search for async storage. That is, let me look at the name well, async storage, and then click on this. It says that this package has been removed and we can install the community packages, for example this one. But for this project I used this one. The implementation is going to be similar, so let me click on the npm, and this is the snippet for installing that. I have copied that and back to my project and then paste that. Alright, it has been installed. Let me import it as async storage from, then gonna have the initial state for our application, and then we're gonna have the slices. Let's begin with a function to get a user from storage. For this, I'm gonna change the name to load user from async storage, and we are gonna use try and catch. The purpose for this function is that we are going to pre-populate in case the user has been logged in into the initial state so that we can see it in our store. So here I will say const user info is equal to await the async storage dot get item. So in case we have the user, then we're gonna pass the data from the storage and return that. Otherwise we are gonna return null, and in here we're going to return null for this. So let's continue with the initial state, and it goes like this: initial state, and then I'm going to provide user, and by default it is null. And that is all what I need for my initial state. The rest of the data are going to be managed by TanStack, and that is React query. Let's begin with the slice. We are going to use what is called create slice from Redux Toolkit, which is this. And this is going to generate actions and reducers for us. And reducer is a function that is going to take in the action plus data to make changes to our store. So here as a function call and then the object, we're going to specify a name here. And for the name, I'm going to use off here. And the name attribute here must be unique. And this means that it is going to be used behind the scene by Redux Toolkit. And from there, we're going to have our initial state, and then the reducers for our application. Once again, the purpose for Redux Toolkit here in this particular project is that we are not going to involve him or her to make the HTTP request, but instead we are using TanStack for it. So for this one, as soon as we got the data from TanStack or the server, we are going to dispatch the action. So in here, we're going to have these actions. One action is login user action. And for this one, you can name it whatever you want and assign to a callback function as that. And in the callback, we have access to state and then the action. The action can be logging in, registration, and logging out. And this state holds the values in our store. So here we are going to change the data by saying that state.user. In here, we are updating the user in the store. And we have what is called the payload. The payload here represents the response from the server. So for logging in, the payload will be the data after we log in. So in here, we are updating the user. And that is it for the login in action. So after logging in, we are going to save the user into the storage by using async storage.setItem by passing in the identifier, and here we are stringifying the data. Then after logging in, we're going to have one for logout user action, or let me say logout action. And for this, we're going to empty the user data from the store. Bring comma here. And here we are assigning null to the data in the store by removing the user from the storage. And lastly, we're going to have one called set user. You can name it as set user action. And the purpose for this action is that we are going to call this one as soon as our application got loaded. Perfect. So last step is that we are going to generate the actions, and it's going to be as const we are exporting, and here it goes like this. We are accessing the login user, the logout. Here supposed to be logout, so let me rename this one to logout. All right, so in here we are accessing the login in, logout, and set user from the auth_actions, which means that we have to assign to what is called auth/ as that. And the next step is we are going to generate the reducer, and it's going to be as const, and then I'm going to export, and here I'm exporting the reducer. Last step is we're going to have a function to load the user as load user, which is equal to const load user, and it goes like this. In the function, I'm going to pass in the dispatch and call the function up here to load the user by awaiting it. In case we have one, we're going to call dispatch by passing in the user info. Now we have configured our slice. The last step is going to be the store. So here I'm going to use configure store from Redux toolkit, and then let's bring in the auth reducer, the one we exported from here. And the function goes like this: export store. I'm going to pass in the reducer and then assign a variable called auth here, and then assign to reducer. So last step is that let's try out by dispatching the action. So now we're gonna dispatch it in the login in, and that is after we got the data from the server. I think for this one also we have some duplications, so let me remove this one also from here as that. This one will go away. All right, good. So this is where we have the login user, therefore we can dispatch the action here. So let's import the login in action, and we will need a hook called use dispatch for dispatching the action, and we have the auto import. So we're gonna have instance of the dispatch as that. Let me say dispatch, and it goes like this. Perfect. So in the mutate async here, I will say dispatch action, and it goes like dispatch by passing in the login in action and in the payload. Perfect. So now moment of truth. Let me reload the application to make sure that everything is working fine. All right, so log in. Well, we have this error. Simply means that couldn't find React Redux context. So it means that we are not wrapping the application with Redux. At the moment, we have configured the time stack at the global level. We are going to do the same thing for Redux. So in the Redux here, I'm gonna have one file called app wrapper. Well, we can directly configure it the same way we did for the time stack. But for this one, we are going to dispatch the action to check in case a user is logged in. So if you call or dispatch an action here by using use dispatch, you're going to have an error, meaning that by the time this component got mounted, we didn't have the React Redux being wrapped with the application. I was doing that and I faced some couple of bugs. That is why I'm gonna have a separate file called app wrapper, and it goes like this: const, we are going to return the stack navigation. So let me import stack from Expo Router, and we will need load user action or the function from the slice. And then we will need use dispatch for dispatching the action. All right, so we are going to return the stack and remove this one. All right, for this we have done it before, so I'm gonna provide in the options, and then header shown is false, and then the title here I will say supposed to be inside here as title, and it's going to be home here. The same way we did it at the root level, which is this one, we are extracting this one from here and pass it or use it inside the app wrapper. Perfect, right? So now I'm gonna call use dispatch here assigned to dispatch, which is equal to that, and let's have use effect, and then I'm gonna pass in the dispatch by saying load user and then the dependencies as dispatch. And that is it for the app wrapper. So last step is that at the main entry point for our navigation, which is this one, we are going to bring in the app wrapper. I think I have to export it from here as export default app wrapper as that. So at the layout here, I'm going to remove this one by passing in the app wrapper, which is that. So now I'm gonna wrap the application with Redux by using provider from React Redux. As you can see the error, it says that it couldn't find React Redux. So this is the time that we are using the React Redux by using the provider. Alright, so this one takes in one prop called store. So let's import store from our configuration file, which is this one. Now in the provider, provide store by passing in the store. With this one, we can dispatch the action. Log in and log in and log in success. So to confirm that indeed the user has been logged in and the action has been dispatched and then save the user into the storage, we are going to extract the user from the store. In case we are using a web, we have what is called Redux Dev 2 extension, but for this one we can do it, but let's avoid that and by using console login. So to be able to get data from the store, we're going to use what is called use selector. And then let me log the user from the store, and I will say store data here, and let me log the state. Alright, as that. Now moment of truth, let me open the terminal, and as you can see, store data and the user has been saved in our store. This means that the user is being logged in. As soon as a user logs in, we are going to redirect to the bottom tab navigation. Therefore, let's bring this one back and I'm gonna call this one after dispatching. Perfect. So let me try again. And for some reasons, I'm not redirecting. So let me see where we have that. I think we are not using the use router here. So here as use router from Expo, and then we are going to have instance of the router, which is equal to that. Now it will work. Let me try again, and I have been redirected. So last part is a profile. We are going to fetch or pull the data from the storage and display it here, and this is what we're going to call the action for logging out. So let's continue with the profile. Remember, we are in the tab here and this is the component. So here we're going to get the user from the storage as we did before. So if I come here and then copy this one back to the profile, we are accessing the user from the store. So instead of console login, I'm going to return by saying that state.of.user. At this point, you may be asking how I came up with this one. So we have two ways. One is you can log the entire state here and you're going to see the structure, or you can trace it in your application. So first of all, we have the store Redux here and store. The first property here is called off. That is why we are saying that state.off. And then in the action itself, and that is a slice, that is the initial state instead we have as user. So it's going to be the store, and that is off.user to be able to get the user. Perfect, right? All right, so we are going to pull the user from the store. I'm going to assign as const, and I will say user is equal to that. And here, to make our life easier, I'm gonna provide you with some default styling. So in case we have a user, then display the user.email, and this is a button for logging out. All right, so let me provide the CSS also, replace with this one, and now let's see the profile. Let me log in. Think the server is not running. Yeah, of course. So let me update the endpoint. Copy this one, and back here, let's locate the API and then replace with this, and now it will work. Log in, and if I go to profile, I have use selector is not defined, so let me import that. Log in, and now it worked. I think we have one more touchable opacity. Don't worry, it's just importation. Log in again, profile, and handle logout, which is this. So let's have the handle logout here. So in the handle logout, we are going to dispatch the action for logging out. So let's bring in use dispatch, and let's have instance of the dispatch. And then in here, or let me bring in the logout action, and this is where you're gonna log out by dispatching the action as that. Perfect. So let me try again. Success, profile, logout, and no user logged in. This means that the logging out is working. All right, so at this point, I can say that we are done with the authentication flow, but we lack something, and that is protecting some screens. At the moment, I have been locked out, but I can still access the profile, likewise the bottom tab navigation. So we have to avoid it by protecting some of the tabs or the screens. In case you're familiar with React, by using React Router DOM, the logic is going to be the same. I'm going to have a component, and then inside, I'm going to have one called protected route. And we are going to change the way we are displaying the screens. So let's have the components as, and this function is going to take in what is called children. The children are going to be the individual screens or pages that we are returning. So before returning the children, and that is the individual screens, we are going to make a condition to check in case the user is being logged in. So here we're going to check the user from the store. So here is going to be as the use selector. To make our life easier, we're going to copy the one that we did from the, it is inside the tabs and then the profile. This one, we will need this one because we are pulling the user from the store. So required these guys. We don't need this patch here. We are just checking the user from the store. So here we are going to check in case the user is not logged in, then we are going to redirect the user to the login page by using use effect, and then as that for the array, we're going to pass in the user. Perfect. So in here, in case we don't have the user, then we are going to redirect by using use router for navigation or navigating the user as const router is equal to that. I'm gonna use router.push and the path is off.logged-in. And we can also display some loading in case we have one. Therefore, let's keep track about loading in our store. Alright, so for the initial state, I will say is loading. By default, it is false. So as soon as the user logs in or logging in, we're gonna say is loading is set to false, and set user loading is also false. So by default, it is true. In case we have the user, it's going to be false. So in here, we can destructure the is loading also. Therefore, let's remove this one from here. Alright, so let's bring in the activity indicator in case we have loading. After that, or after the redirecting, I'm gonna check in case we have loading, and for the size, I'm gonna use large. Alright, and the color as that. You can change the color, and here in case we don't have the user, we're gonna return null, otherwise return the children. So let me export it here as that. So any screen that we want to protect, we are going to wrap with this protected component. So let me locate the layout, and that is the tabs one, which is this. I'm going to protect all. So here I will say protect route, and I'm going to wrap it with the entire tab navigator as that. And let's see, let me get back to the login in and then profile. If I log out, as you can see, I have been redirected and I cannot go to the bottom tab because I have been logged out. Perfect. So in case you want to protect individual pages, so here we're gonna wrap it using the protect route here, or the component as we did before. Wrap it with this high order component, and as that, paste that. And in case we want to protect the home page also, we can do that. The choice is up to you. So let me bring back the video on the home page, which is this. Now we are done with the project. Let me uncomment, and we have the project as that. Now let's look at the flow one more time. Log in, loading, and indeed I have been logged in. Alright guys, so here ends this project. In case you found this video useful, don't forget to subscribe, comment and share. Catch you up in my next project.